a lot of people say to me, whoa, Jay, this is like therapy working with you, because a lot of the stuff we do deal with is those emotions. And some of those emotions that do show up in relationships are, there's a lot of resentment in relationships. That's a big thing. There might be resentment towards past partners as well. And so it's dealing with what are the emotions that we're holding on to that we need to shift and let go of so that we can move forward. Because, hey, try and have a great relationship with a woman if you're resenting women. Not going to go down too well, or vice versa. If you're resenting men and you say, men are all the same.
100%, yeah. Because the women that I do know that are in that mindset aren't meeting anyone anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be open to each and every experience. My question to you is, doing work like this, had you been through anything in your life that made you wish that you'd had a mindset coach, or kind of what led you to this path to do this for other people?
Yeah, oh my word, I wish I'd have found it sooner, trust me. So what led me to this is I started my business 10 years ago. And when I first got into business, I really struggled. I had to put myself out there. And that was a really scary thing. But I've always been someone who's quite persistent, and I pushed anyway. And despite putting myself out there, to the outside world, I look like I'm my shit figured out. Like it was like Jay, this really confident person. But on the inside, I was actually terrified that someone was going to leave me a negative comment. Someone was going to say, oh no, you said this wrong. And I was like, oh no, and I could feel that in my chest now when I think about it. And so all of this stuff was happening for me, and I was struggling to generate the level of money I wanted in my business for about 5 years. And I kind of got sick of it, and I started to ask questions like, why the hell do I keep doing this? And luckily I was part of a community where there was a number of these coaches who started helping you with personal development and mindset. And I remember I was sat in Malaysia. Me and my wife were traveling the world at the time, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and I was on a coaching call with one of these coaches. And I can't remember exactly what I was saying, but I was just talking to him about, why do I keep creating these results? This is driving me nuts. Why am I just trying to do this, and then this is happening? And this guy just shined a light on something for me. He said to me, Jay, have you ever considered that you've spent your entire life trying to please your dad?
Oh.
And I was like, bush. Like my eyes just started streaming, and I was like, what? What do I do with that? And basically that led me on this massive path of discovery and personal development, and starting to understand how my parents divorced. So my parents basically got divorced when I was 3 years old. And people used to say to me, hey Jay, did your parents' divorce ever impact you? And I would be like, oh no, it's fine. Like, it's fine. You know, parents split up all the time. You see all the time parents are divorced. And what I had forgotten, because I'd suppressed, is following my parents' breakup when I was 3 years of age, there was 10 years of court battles, using the kids against each other, getting passed around, my dad being there, not there, and even to the point my dad turned up with a baseball bat to try and kill my stepdad. Police, just massive shame, just horrendous, just not fun at all for a child. And all of this massively impacted me, especially my parents' divorce. And what I realized is that when I was 3 years old, so just to give you a bit of context, when we are 0 to around 6 years of age, we're just emotional, right? If you've ever seen kids, they're just emotion, but we're also what's called egocentric. So it's all about me. Some people are like, men are like 40 years of age and they're still like this. It's all about me. And the thing about children is they think that whatever the parents do, it's their fault. So for me, my parents split up. So guess what I started to mean? I've done something wrong. So my mum had an affair, my dad moved 2 miles away, and me as a young boy, and I know this is not going to make sense to listeners completely because it's not logical, it's emotional. This is, I always say to people, if you want to know how your unconscious mind works, have you ever had a crazy dream?
Yeah.
You know how logical it is?
Yeah.
It's not, right? It's wild. This is how the mind works. And what I made it mean is my dad's left me, which must mean he doesn't love me. Yeah. Which must mean I'm not good enough. And so I spent my entire life trying to prove to my dad that who I was enough, trying to get him to love me, trying to be the confident, be the most committed, be the best at everything to try and get him to love me. But by my very nature of trying to get him to love me, I'd forgotten to actually love myself. And that was a big breakthrough for me.
And that's number one, loving yourself.
Yeah. And that was showing up in your business?
Yeah, it was showing up in my business. And it's really crazy, right? 'Cause if you have a fear of rejection...
Oh, who has that?
Know anyone?
Sean has openly admitted this on the podcast, so I'm allowed to call you out.
I think everything is rejection. But I'm the same. I've got dad problems too, exactly the same. I don't think my dad really ever loved me. I was trying to get my dad to love me. Don't like rejection.
Yeah. And
Sean won't even put herself in a position to get it.
Never, not even close.
Wow. Yeah. It's one of the things a lot of people struggle with. I'm sure a lot of your listeners will be able to relate, that fear of rejection, because what's going on there is there's shame in there. And it might not feel like that for everybody, but there's a shame, right? There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. And so why wouldn't they love me? They're meant to love me. And what I learn about my parents, and I've kind of got this perspective now being a bit older, is that as children, we have this idyllic view of how our parents should be. They should be great. And then you look at other kids' parents and you see them doing something, you're like, I want some of that. And we have this very idyllic view of how our parents should be. And I've realized that my parents served the exact purpose they were meant to. So let me give you a little bit more context. So my parents got divorced. They were 3 years old. My dad was the type of guy that he was brutal. Like when it comes to sport, just to give you context, I would play golf. I play a lot of golf. And there was this hole called the 10th green. And you'd come off the green. My dad would always be waiting there, like his dad was waiting there. And I'd come off the green and my dad would be waiting there and he'd go, give me a card. And I'd be like, oh, shit. Not doing that well. And I'd give him my card and he'd just look at it and he'd just look at me and he'd just go, rubbish.
Oh god.
Yours was like actively, like my dad was just not very present and didn't give me anything, but yours was like actively making you feel like you wasn't good enough.
I had a cup final, semi-final, or cup final it was. We lost 1-0 and I walked off, clearly upset young lad. I think I was 13 at the time. And as a young boy, I wanted my dad just to put his arm around me and say, hey, there'll be another game, it'll be okay. And he just turned around and went, you were rubbish today.
Can I ask how that's affected your romantic relationships? Did that affect you when dating?
Yeah, so what that's led to is ridiculous expectations of other people.
Okay.
And by that, I mean that people need to be competent, perfection, basically. And so the not good enough shows up as, I'm a lot better at it now, but I used to just have this massive expectation of people that if they're not perfect, then I don't want to know them. They need to live up to this expectation. But part of that was actually fear. Because, hey, what if they didn't live up to my dad's expectations?
Oh, gosh,
It's crazy how deep-rooted things are. People that aren't into self-development don't understand.
It
really is that deep-rooted.
And that's why it's so amazing that you realised all of this. And that's probably what led you to now being in a happy, healthy relationship. She touched on relationships there, how perfect mum and dad relationships look. And we have that problem as well, though, from films, don't we, in terms of romantic relationships, the expectation that we have. But that's really interesting.
It's funny, I was watching Hitch last night with my wife.
Great film.
And I was saying to her, if anyone who hasn't watched the movie, you should watch it. It's great. I think it was built off The Game by Neil Strauss. Have you ever heard of that? Great. The Game.
I've had people use The Game on me.
Oh, really?
So I've had a guy approach me in the street and lie a lot about age and lots of different things, but the approach that he did to me in the street was basically something that this Neil wrote in a book to tell guys to just practice for your confidence as much as possible, go up to as many women, just pick one and do it. So I went on a date with this guy thinking he liked me, but I was just part of a massive numbers game for his ego.
Wow. Yeah, there's a whole underground scene of pickup artists.
That's it, the pickup artist. Everything I tell Sean, she's shocked.
It's just because like she's got an example of a man from every dating situation. I've never known anything like it.
Yeah, so the film, I've spoken to my wife about it, and they were painting this picture of, was it? I can't remember who the main actress was, the Brenneman, the guy with the glasses pulled, the celebrity. But it painted this picture that you can just say this and you can do this and you're just going to sweep them off their feet and it's all going to be happily ever after. And it's just not healthy, in my opinion. And I think a bit like I was talking about this expectation that I have of others, it conditions people to expect that that's the way relationships are, that's the way dating is, that's the way love happens. And in my experience, don't invite you, ladies, it's not necessarily the case. It's not to say it isn't possible. I'm sure it does happen. For most people, they probably agree that's not necessarily a reflection of true life.
Definitely.
And when it comes to you having high expectations of other people, not that you thought you were better than them, but was there anything that was like, I'm not lovable and I'm not good enough? Because it sounds like you kind of flipped it on the other person, whereas for me it's like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love. But it sounds like you're like, are they worthy of love, are they good enough for my dad? But did you still feel like, how was your self-worth in that time?
Oh yeah, my self-worth was rock bottom.
Oh, okay.
The truth is I didn't want to look at myself.
Right.
It's easier to look at other people and the flaws in them and say, oh, it must be them, that's the problem, it's not me. And I think that's true of most people who aren't getting what they want in life, because there's two ends of the spectrum. If you're familiar with the cause and effect principle, have you ever heard of that before? So we're either at the effect of our life or we're at the cause of our life. And if you're at the effect of your life, you start to blame other people, blame other things. You're a victim of your people, situations and circumstances, versus cause. You are fully responsible for it. So you asked me before about when did I feel responsible for a relationship, and probably the real answer is when I started taking responsibility for my life. And when I started taking responsibility for my life, I was in a position where I'm mature enough to then go, okay, well, I'm going to take responsibility for somebody else's life, i.e. my wife. And I don't mean wait on a hand and foot, anything like that, but I mean be responsible for taking care of her needs and what she wants. Because this is one of the things I talk to about all my clients, is the more responsibility you take for your life and the people around you, the more you can get what you want in life.
Hey guys, I'm Daisy.
And I'm Sean.
And remember to like, follow and subscribe if you want to see more great content with us, and of course our amazing guests.
And lots of dating advice and lessons learned.
We can't wait to see you next week.